You know, it's a strange thing how the very people who once clapped for you, smiled at you, and cheered you on can suddenly begin to treat you like you've done something wrong. No argument, no betrayal, no major falling out, just a slow, cold shift in the way they look at you. The silence becomes louder, the energy changes, you feel it even when they say nothing. It leaves you wondering, what did I do? But the truth is, sometimes you didn't do anything to them. You just did something for yourself. You grew. You leveled up. You started becoming more aware of who you are and what you want. You stopped shrinking yourself to fit into places that were never meant for your potential. Maybe you started healing. Maybe you started succeeding. Maybe you just started loving yourself a little more than you used to. And while you were finally stepping into the light you fought so hard to find, someone else was watching. And not everyone watching you clap is doing it out of love. Some of them are clapping because they're shocked you made it that far. And deep down, a piece of them is hoping you fall so they can say, "See, I knew it wouldn't last." This is what happens when your growth begins to highlight other people's stagnation. Your progress shines a light on the areas in their life they've been avoiding. It reminds them of the dreams they buried, the work they didn't do, the excuses they've been hiding behind. And instead of saying, "I'm inspired," they say, "You've changed," not as a compliment, but as a criticism. Because in their eyes, your evolution is an act of betrayal. You're no longer playing the same role you once did in their life. You're no longer the one who needed saving, advice, validation, or approval. You've become your own person, and that can feel threatening to people who never expected you to outgrow the version of you they were comfortable with. People will always project their fears and insecurities onto others, especially when they're not ready to face their own reflection. And unfortunately, that projection often comes in the form of resentment, not because you wronged them, not because you were cruel, but because you were brave enough to become what they didn't have the courage to. And deep down they know it. They might never say it. In fact, they'll twist the narrative and convince themselves and others that you're the one who became arrogant, selfish, or distant. But the truth is, you simply stopped apologizing for your growth. There's a silent war that begins the moment you start prioritizing yourself. The moment you choose discipline over distraction, vision over comfort, peace over chaos, that war isn't loud, it's subtle. It hides in passive-aggressive comments, in the invitations that stop coming, in the praise that slowly fades. It shows up in the eyes that once looked at you with pride, now filled with doubt or bitterness. And it hurts because part of you still remembers the love that used to be there. But here's what you must understand. Your light was never meant to dim, so someone else could stay comfortable in the dark. So when people suddenly start hating you, don't always take it personally. Sometimes it's not about who you are, but about what you represent. You are proof that transformation is possible, and that's terrifying to those who've built their identity around the belief that they can't change. You didn't do anything wrong, you just grew. There comes a moment in your life when you stop saying yes just to keep the peace. You stop letting people cross boundaries they should have never approached in the first place. You stop shrinking, over-explaining, tolerating, and pretending. And it feels good, liberating even, but then something strange happens. The people who once liked you the most suddenly start pulling away. They act distant, cold, irritated, even angry. You stand there wondering what changed, and the answer is this: you did. You stopped being easy to manipulate. People don't always hate you because you're mean or disrespectful. Sometimes they start hating you the moment they lose control over you. When you were easy to guilt trip, when you always picked up the phone no matter how drained you were, when you allowed their moods to dictate your peace. That's when they felt most comfortable. But the second you start recognizing your worth and stop dancing to their emotional tune, the mask falls. The affection fades, the warmth turns into passive aggression. You begin to see their true colors not because they changed, but because you stopped allowing them to hide behind your silence. This is the part of growth people don't often talk about, the silent fallout that comes with setting boundaries. The way people recoil when you finally say, "No, that doesn't work for me anymore." They'll say you've become selfish, cold, unavailable, but what they really mean is, "I can't use you like I used to." It's not hate in the truest sense, it's frustration. Frustration that their version of you is gone, the version that made them feel powerful, needed, in control. And this shift doesn't just happen in toxic relationships. It happens with friends, family, even co-workers. You'll notice it when you stop oversharing, when you start protecting your energy, when you realize that not every phone call needs to be answered and not every emotional outburst deserves your attention. The more peace you create for yourself, the more uncomfortable it makes those who relied on your chaos to feel validated. And so, the war begins not a war of words or fists, but of cold shoulders, silence, backhanded compliments, and unspoken tension. It's not loud, but it's heavy. You feel it in the room before a word is even said. You start to realize that their love was conditional. Conditional on your compliance, conditional on your ability to be predictable, agreeable, and always available. But once you step outside of that box, their affection doesn't follow. It stays behind, tied to the version of you that served their comfort. And while it hurts to see someone withdraw from you just because you started respecting yourself, it's also the most powerful form of clarity. Because now you know they didn't love you, they loved what you did for them. This is the silent war so many of us never see coming. The war between your evolution and their expectations, and as painful as it is, it's also necessary. You can't grow while staying chained to the comfort of people who only supported you when you were easy to influence. You can't heal while still being controlled by the same voices that once broke you. At some point, you have to choose their approval or your peace. So when they start hating you for saying no, for not engaging, for choosing yourself, remember that hate is just the echo of lost control. Let it go. Let them go. You're not here to be controlled. You're here to be free. Sometimes the most dangerous kind of hate doesn't come from enemies. It comes from people who once claimed they cared. People who smile to your face, clap for your wins, and say all the right things, but deep down, there's something else brewing. You can feel it in the way their compliments suddenly feel hollow, in the way their support slowly shifts into subtle jabs and offhand remarks. They'll say things like, "You've changed," or "Don't forget where you came from," or "You're lucky things worked out for you." On the surface, it sounds harmless, but underneath, it's not support. It's jealousy wearing a mask. Jealousy rarely announces itself directly. It doesn't walk in the door yelling, "I hate that you're doing better than me." No, it whispers behind your back. It gossips under the illusion of concern. It throws shade and then hides its hands, and it often comes from the people you least expect, those who stood beside you in the beginning. Those who you trusted, shared dreams with, and celebrated small wins with. But somewhere along the way, as you started rising, something shifted inside them. Your progress reminded them of everything they hadn't done. Your light exposed the shadows they were trying to ignore. See, when you start growing, whether it's in your career, your healing journey, your mindset, or your self-worth, not everyone grows with you. Some people get inspired by your success, but others get intimidated by it, especially if they've spent their lives making excuses for why they're stuck. You become living proof that their excuses are just that, excuses. And instead of rising to meet their own potential, some will choose the easier path, tear you down rather than build themselves up. What's tricky about this is that the jealousy doesn't always come with obvious hate. It hides in compliments with thorns. You're doing great, but don't let it get to your head. Wow, must be nice to get lucky like that. Or worse, they go silent altogether. No more likes, no more messages, no more showing up for you. The same people who once supported your every move suddenly disappear. They don't congratulate you, they don't ask how you're doing, and if they do, there's an edge in their tone that makes you question if they ever truly wanted to see you win. The silent war begins here, a quiet, cold tension that no one speaks about out loud, but everyone can feel. And it hurts because you didn't expect it. You thought your growth would inspire, not divide. You thought your wins would be shared, not resented. But the truth is, not everyone wants to see you become more, especially if they've become comfortable staying less. Sometimes the hate you feel isn't about who you are, it's about what you represent. You remind them of what they could be if only they tried harder. If only they healed, risked, or believed in themselves the way you did. But instead of admitting that, they turn their discomfort into silent resentment. And they'll never say it out loud, because that would require honesty they're not ready to face. So instead, they keep pretending to root for you while quietly hoping you stumble, pretending to celebrate you while silently competing with you. It's painful, but it's revealing, and once you see it for what it is, you learn not to take it personally. Their jealousy isn't your burden to carry. You don't need to dim your light to keep their insecurities comfortable. You're not responsible for how others choose to deal with your success. Keep growing anyway, keep shining anyway. Let them feel whatever they need to feel, because real support doesn't come with conditions, and real love doesn't hide behind envy. It's one of the most confusing feelings in the world, realizing that someone has started to hate you, distance themselves from you, or treat you differently, and you genuinely don't know why. You replay every conversation, every text, every moment, looking for the crack in the glass, the moment things shifted. But often there isn't one, not a clear one at least. What you don't realize is that sometimes the hate doesn't come from what you did. It comes from what they think you did. People don't always confront what bothers them. They don't always ask for clarity or give you the chance to explain. Instead, they create a version of the story that makes sense to them, one where you're the villain and they're the victim. Maybe you didn't reply fast enough one day. Maybe you cancelled plans because you were emotionally drained. Maybe you started posting more wins online and they assumed you were showing off. Or maybe you simply grew quieter, more focused, more distant, not out of malice, but out of necessity. Yet somewhere in their mind, that shift became a betrayal. We like to believe people see us the way we see ourselves, but that's rarely the case. Everyone is watching you through the filter of their own wounds, expectations, and insecurities. A simple silence becomes rejection. A busy schedule becomes arrogance. A forgotten message becomes proof that you no longer care. And instead of reaching out to understand, they let the narrative take shape in silence, until their imagination turns into a silent war that you never even saw coming. The truth is, some people are more committed to their assumptions than they are to the actual relationship. It's easier for them to believe the worst about you than to face the discomfort of a real conversation. Because a real conversation might reveal that the problem wasn't you at all. It was their own fear of being left behind, or not feeling important anymore. So instead, they withdraw, they become cold, they talk to others instead of talking to you. And slowly, without your knowledge or consent, you go from friend to foe in their mind. And what makes this harder is that it's not loud. They don't yell. They don't confront. They just start treating you like a stranger. Like someone who hurt them even though you never got the memo. You're left confused, trying to solve a puzzle with missing pieces, while they've already decided you're the enemy. You end up carrying guilt that doesn't belong to you, questioning your every move, wondering if you could have done something different. But here's what you need to remember. You are not responsible for the stories people tell themselves in your silence. If someone was truly for you, they'd give you the benefit of the doubt. They'd ask, they'd clarify. They'd talk to you not about you. But when someone wants to believe you're the villain, nothing you say will change their mind. Because hating you quietly gives them something they desperately want, a sense of moral high ground. It justifies their coldness, their distance, their decision to walk away without explanation. You can't keep chasing people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You can't keep bleeding yourself dry trying to prove your heart. If someone truly valued the connection, they would fight for clarity, not comfort. So let them believe what they need to believe. Let them have their version of the story, because at the end of the day, the truth doesn't need defending. It just needs time. There's something unsettling that happens when you start living in your truth. At first, it feels good, powerful, even. You begin speaking up for yourself, showing up as your authentic self, making decisions that align with your values. You stop pretending. You stop playing roles that no longer fit you. And for the first time in a long time, you feel real, alive. But then, almost out of nowhere, you begin to notice a shift. Certain people start to withdraw. Their energy changes, their smiles fade, and the connection you once shared feels tense, strained, like you're suddenly a problem. It doesn't always make sense at first because you're not being cruel. You're not tearing anyone down. You're just being honest. You're holding yourself accountable. You're creating boundaries, standing in integrity, and making choices that don't require approval. And that's where the problem begins, not because you're wrong, but because your truth starts to expose what others have been hiding. Your clarity makes their confusion uncomfortable. Your healing highlights their unresolved pain. And instead of being inspired by your transformation, they begin to feel threatened by it. Some people build their entire identity around masks, around performance, around denial. They survive by pretending to be happy, pretending to be okay, pretending to be someone they're not, just to be accepted. So when someone like you comes along, unapologetically real and raw, it challenges everything they've been running from. Your honesty becomes a mirror, and that reflection is not something everyone is ready to face. You'll notice it in the little things. The way they question your motives, the way they criticize your choices, not because they're wrong, but because they wouldn't have had the courage to make them. The way they dismiss your growth as being too much, or too intense, or not who you used to be. What they really mean is, you're no longer someone I can comfortably exist around without questioning my own choices. And sometimes your very presence feels confrontational to them. Just by existing as your real self, you don't have to preach. You don't have to judge. You don't have to say a single word. Just you showing up, fully aligned, triggers the parts of them that aren't. That's how silent resentment begins. They start to dislike you, but they can't quite explain why. They might even convince themselves that you're arrogant, too proud, or acting superior. But the truth is, they don't hate you. They hate what you reflect back to them. And this is why the hate feels so sudden. Why it hits you unexpectedly? Because you weren't doing anything to harm them. You were just becoming more of yourself. But not everyone benefits from your authenticity. Some relationships only work when you're playing small, hiding your brilliance, or carrying their emotional weight. The moment you stop doing that, the dynamic falls apart, not because you broke it, but because it was never built on truth to begin with. It's painful to realize that your growth will cost you people, that your light will repel those who are still clinging to the dark. But you can't dim yourself to keep others comfortable. You can't unsee what you've learned just to make someone else feel less insecure. At some point, you have to be okay with being misunderstood. You have to accept that living your truth means not everyone will walk with you. And that's okay, because the people who are meant for you won't be exposed by your light, they'll be drawn to it. One of the most difficult truths to accept is that not everyone who starts the journey with you is meant to finish it by your side. Some people are only meant to be chapters, not the entire story. But when someone you once trusted turns bitter, when their love turns into resentment and their presence starts to feel heavy instead of comforting, it can shake something deep inside you, especially when there was no fight, no betrayal, no obvious reason, just distance, silence, and coldness that crept in slowly, quietly. That's when it hurts the most, because the loss doesn't come with a clean cut. It bleeds in questions. You ask yourself over and over again what went wrong. You replay the last conversations, trying to pinpoint where it shifted. But sometimes there isn't a clear reason. Sometimes people walk away from you not because of anything you did to them, but because of everything you became without them. You grew, you healed, you evolved, and not everyone is willing to do the same. So instead of rising with you, they retreat from you. They start finding fault in things they used to love about you. Your confidence is now ego. Your focus is now coldness. Your independence is now arrogance. When people can no longer relate to your mindset, when they feel left behind or unseen because you've moved forward, they often turn that discomfort into blame. It's easier to label you the problem than to admit they stopped growing when you didn't. And sometimes it's not even personal. It's just that your journey reminds them of everything they're not doing, everything they gave up on, everything they're afraid to face within themselves. And when you become a reflection of their unmet potential, they stop cheering for you, not because they hate you, but because your evolution disrupts their comfort. That's the part that makes it so hard to recognize. The hate doesn't always show up as direct conflict. Sometimes it shows up as absence, as unreturned calls, as the way they no longer ask about your life, as the way they minimize your wins or act indifferent to your growth. It's subtle, it's quiet, but it's felt. You feel it in the shift of energy, the awkwardness that replaces effortless conversations. You feel it in how much you start holding back around them, because deep down you know you're not celebrated anymore. You're tolerated, and soon even that starts to fade. It's in those moments that you face a hard decision: shrink yourself to keep them, or stay true to yourself and let them go. It's tempting to go back, to dim your light just enough to feel accepted again, but you already know that's a trap. You've worked too hard to unlearn the patterns that kept you small. You've sacrificed too much to apologize for who you've become. So you choose the harder path. You let go, not out of anger, not out of spite, but out of love, for yourself and even for them. Because holding on to people who silently resent you only poisons the connection and delays your peace. The silent war isn't always about loud betrayal. Sometimes it's about quiet misalignment, and that's okay. People outgrow each other, values shift, paths diverge. It doesn't mean the love wasn't real. It just means it's no longer aligned with who you are now. You can grieve the loss and still move forward with grace. You can release them without resentment. Because your journey deserves people who don't just tolerate your growth, but grow alongside you. And the moment you stop chasing what fell away is the moment you step fully into who you're meant to become.